to hopefully head off to some vacation time, and we've got a little bit of snow down, so I really appreciate that you've joined us. Today, our topic is protecting and promoting the mental health of entrepreneurs in Nova Scotia. And just to give you a sense of who I am, my name again also is Allison Parsons. I'm the founder of WELLENACT Workplace Mental Health Training, and I'm based in Stellarton, Nova Scotia. I'm a certified psychological health and safety advisor, and that is through the Canadian Mental Health Association. And so I'm able to help and support organizational leaders develop training programs, health and safety management programs to help their employees and themselves understand mental health and the role that plays in their organization. In my downtime in April, I decided, okay, I need to do something while we're waiting for this quarantine to end. So I decided I would take a certificate in managing psychological health issues from University of Fredericton. And I also think it's important to note, as an entrepreneur, I live with mental illness, and for the past 10 years, I've had the diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and I've always sort of used that experience in order to inform the content of my training and give my perspective from a person with lived experience of mental illness. So on the agenda today, we've got a bit of a full agenda. We have until 12 p.m., but I just want to review what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about some foundational resources that I have used to inform the content of this, not only this training session, but some of my other training sessions, and discuss the importance of the topic. I usually will start with an introduction to mental health. So it's sort of just a mini mental health awareness session. And that is going to lead me into the sort of bulk of my presentation and discuss the symptoms of anxiety and depression. We're going to talk about some unique stressors that entrepreneurs face in their daily lives, and also how stigma, stereotypes, and discrimination are an important part of understanding in order to support entrepreneurs and encourage them to seek help for themselves. Finally, I'm going to give some recommendations for organizations and some resources for entrepreneurs, and not only entrepreneurs, but also their supporters. So as I said, there's three important documents that I'd just like to touch on briefly. And one of them is the National Standard of Canada for Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. This was developed in 2013 by the CSA group, BNQ, and it was commissioned by the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And what this is a voluntary set of guidelines for organizations to follow to implement psychological health and safety management systems. So similar to traditional occupational health and safety management systems, it identifies risks and the hazards in the workplace, and how we can put in place systems to prevent injury or psychological harm to employees. And assembling the pieces is sort of the second part of the standard. It was developed in 2014, and it's really for organizational leaders to take that information from the standard and how to implement the guide using practical activities. And finally, going it alone. This research paper was developed by the Canadian Mental Health Association and the BDC. And together they have created a research paper that outlines some statistics about the mental health and well-being of entrepreneurs in Canada and what they're experiencing, the types of stressors they're experiencing, and how to move forward. So these are sort of the foundational documents that I am referring to. And of course, we cannot forget the importance of our own lived experience. And so whether you are a person living with a mental illness or a mental health issue, your experience and day-to-day experience is critically important to understanding mental health and how we can continue to talk about mental health. And your lived experience may not be that you have necessarily mental health issues, but you're working with someone, you're working with entrepreneurs who are living with mental health issues. And this is my business, WELLENACT Workplace Mental Health Training. And this, like other entrepreneurs, we see a need, we see a gap, and our business plan is to fill that gap or that need. And so because of my recognition of this, the gap in mental health training, this is where I developed my business. So an important topic. Every time I talk to someone about what I do or what my business is all about, and I tell them, well, it's about mental health training, I get the response from them, oh, that it's such an important topic. We need to be talking about this more. And so I'm just going to review a few reasons why I believe that this is an important topic to talk about entrepreneurship and mental health. So first of all, we cannot disregard the year 2020 in Nova Scotia and across the globe. COVID-19 has changed our lives, and we have now reached the end of 2020, and we're looking back and we're seeing how has this affected us. For entrepreneurs, this means that our businesses have changed. The way that we deliver our products and services have changed. Small businesses have collapsed, or they've been encouraged to pivot. And that word itself, we hear that a lot, that pivot. Well, what happens when your business can't pivot? What happens when you don't have the resources, whether they're financial resources or human resources, that don't allow you to change the way you deliver your products and services on a dime? And another reason why mental health and entrepreneurship is an important topic to discuss is because of the gap in research and training. So as entrepreneurs and business development organizations, they're able to deliver training to do with marketing, sales, financial management, and different sorts of training to do with business development. However, it is hard pressed to find training that is focused on protecting and promoting the mental health of entrepreneurs. There may be some articles that are popping up here and there about, taking care of yourself, but really we're experiencing that gap in training. So not only do entrepreneurs experience the same life factors that we all do that can cause us to experience mental health issues, but they're experiencing unique stressors that we may not recognize ourselves or their supporters or family members, and I'm going to be discussing some of those stressors. Another reason why it's important to talk about entrepreneurship and mental health is that by doing so, we are able to strengthen the existing partnerships and networks that we already have. Across Nova Scotia, we are seeing associations, chambers, organizations, business development organizations, nonprofit, government departments that are all working together. And when we are all on the same page and we're all talking about mental health, that can only strengthen our understanding and our ability to support entrepreneurs. And finally, when we discuss the topic of mental health, we understand how we can take action to improve entrepreneurs' mental health and really everyone in Nova Scotia, how we can take action to move forward. So like I said in the beginning, I like to start off with just a piece about mental health awareness and starting the conversation. And for me, when I start to talk about this, I kind of get the realization that mental health and the term mental illness are sometimes mistaken as being the same thing, and they're not. And so I just want to clarify this by quickly talking about the difference between mental illness and mental health. So mental illness is a condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, behavior, or mood. It drastically interferes with our day-to-day experiences and affects our ability to help our family members and fulfill our work responsibilities. It affects our ability to relate to others and support others. But whereas mental illness was once believed that the symptoms would remain persistent throughout our lives, it's now commonly accepted that recovery from these symptoms is not only possible, but it is expected. And we can see that recovery exists along a continuum that's always fluid. It's moving back and forth. Recovery isn't something that is linear and stays the same. Recovery from a mental illness can change. You can move forward, you can move backward. And so just moving on to talk about mental health. Everyone has mental health. And I like to use the statistic 5 in 5 people have mental health. We all have mental health, and it includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It includes our mood, our attitude and perceptions, our thoughts and behaviors. And it also includes our ability to respond to stressors and challenges and changes within our lives. And so for us, for everyone, we have certain life factors that can positively and negatively influence our mental health. And I've just wanted to name a few here. Of course, finances seem to be on the top of everyone's list. That can be a challenge and impact your mental health. Dealing with family issues, your physical health. If you are experiencing hardships in your physical health, that of course is going to affect your mood and your ability to perform your responsibilities. Our employment status, whether we're employed or whether we're unemployed, substance use, trauma, and increasingly we're seeing housing, especially in rural areas and in the Halifax area, surrounding area, that housing is an issue that is affecting the mental health of the ordinary Nova Scotian. And also, of course, our workplace environments. So we want to think about our mental health as being on a continuum. And the mental health continuum model helps us understand that continuum that fluctuates throughout our lives. So depending on the stressors that we're experiencing, we can be sort of in 4 different categories. And so when we look at these categories and we start from healthy mental health is when we are faced with a challenge or a stressor in our lives. It may have a toll on us, but we're able to recover fairly quickly, sort of bounce back, and our mood doesn't fluctuate extremely. We're able to get a good night's sleep, we're eating healthy, we're physically active, and we enjoy a social life. And generally, we just feel good. When we move down that continuum to reacting, we're starting to slip a little ways from that healthy state of mind, where if we are faced with a challenge or a stressor, a life challenge, we're not exactly feeling the same way as we are when we're healthy. We're starting to feel anxious, hesitant that we're going to actually get through this challenge. Our sleep patterns are interrupted. We may have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. We might not be interacting with others the same way that we have before. And we may be, experiencing anger or changes in our regular moods. But when we move down further the continuum, we see that injured and ill are, they're sliding down that continuum, and we can experience 2 major mental health issues that I want to talk about next. So one being depression. And we hear this term depression, I'm so depressed, or I don't feel good lately. But depression is a mental illness that affects a person's mood, and it impacts the way that we think about ourselves and the way that we think about others and relate to others. Depression is more than having a bad day or feeling blue. We hear those, oh, I'm just down in the dumps. But generally, we react to that, and we're able to move up the continuum towards a healthy mental health. However, if we do get into that injured and ill phase, without support such as counseling, medication, personal support systems, depression can be reoccurring and long-lasting. And of course, as we move along that continuum into the injured and ill phases, anxiety can happen, and anxiety is a mental illness that can affect anyone at any age. It causes unexpected or unhelpful anxiety that can seriously impact our daily life. So feeling anxious, you'll often hear, well, some stress is good stress. It moves us forward to kind of be the best that we can be. It's good stress. But having an anxiety disorder means that anxiety that you feel is extremely overwhelming, and it interferes with your daily life experiences. It's among the most common mental health issues, and it can also be triggered by a specific event or experience. And that can be an example of that would be the stressors that entrepreneurs feel. So I want you to bear with me here. Usually I don't like to read exactly from my PowerPoint, but sometimes you can't avoid that. And in this case, when we're talking about the signs and symptoms of anxiety and depression, I feel that it's very important for me to outline these signs and symptoms as clearly as possible. And so if you can just, come along with me, I'm going to read off some of these signs and symptoms. And hopefully, it will allow you to either recognize these symptoms within yourself or within somebody who's close to you, maybe a coworker or a peer, a colleague, a son or a daughter, mother, father. And so I'm just going to move through these here. So number one, persistent feelings of sadness or unhappiness. And like I had mentioned before, this is not just feeling down in the dumps. These are persistent feelings. And so you are waking up every day and you're feeling sad or unhappy. You're feeling anxious, apprehensive, and overwhelmed. And this is more than usual. This isn't the good stress. This is the overwhelming stress that happens to you over, over time, generally speaking, every day. You may find yourself lashing out at others or acting irritable or angry. And this may be even over minor issues. And for example, maybe you ordered blue ballpoint pens, and when they show up, you see that they're black ballpoint pens. And all of a sudden, that triggers you to become angry over something very minor. But that may be a sign that you're experiencing anxiety or depression. This is one that's, that I've experienced, withdrawing from colleagues and family and lack of enthusiasm for your business or hobbies that you used to be really excited about, your business. You feel so excited that things are moving forward and you're doing well. Yet when you're experiencing depression or anxiety, it seems that you have a lack of enthusiasm for that, and you want to withdraw from your families because you start to feel weak, or you start to feel as if you're embarrassed, and so we tend to isolate ourselves. Again, one of the most prominent symptoms that I've experienced in my experience of depression is difficulties focusing on tasks and remembering information. So when you are experiencing depression, it's almost like there's a fog that's in front of you that doesn't allow you to focus on the things that you used to be really good at. So for example, if you are writing content for your website, you may have a hard time coming up with the words. You may not have the energy to sit down and write content. And it also may cause you to miss meetings or miss deadlines. So if you find yourself or someone else who seems to be showing those signs, that may be a red flag. Another experience myself, difficulty making decisions, whether it's a minor decision, going to the grocery store and you stand in that aisle and you can't decide if you want to buy white minute rice or brown rice. And that may seem very simple, but when you have depression, those are the types of things that, you know, will cause us to not be able to make those simple decisions. And when you're in a business environment and you need to be focusing and making decisions for your business, when you're experiencing that difficulty of making decisions, that can have a major impact on the success of your business and also your employees. So another marker of anxiety and depression is negative changes in work performance and attendance. And so, you may be the type of person who is on time. You you pride yourself in giving 100% no matter what the task is that you are doing. But yet you're making mistakes and you are showing up to work, but you're not feeling as if you're getting anything done. And that is what we call presenteeism, is that you're physically there, but mentally you are so distracted by mental health issues that you can't seem to get your work finished and show that positive work performance. So increased use of alcohol and other symptoms. And this may be at home or even at work. And you hear the term self-medication. Well, what that means is if you are experiencing signs and symptoms of anxiety or depression, sometimes we want to relieve ourselves of those experiences, and we tend to increase our use of alcohol to kind of set ourselves at ease. But if you find that you are increasing that amount, that could be problematic. Another sign of depression is that you are physically and mentally drained. You are extremely fatigued. You have high blood pressure, and you might even have stomach issues or digestion issues. And there was a campaign on TV called Depression Hurts. And what that is, they're talking about the physical symptoms of depression, the stress in your neck, the tightness in your throat or your chest, headaches, eye strain, that could be linked to your mental health. And just a couple more symptoms here I want to go over. A significant weight gain or loss, even when you're not dieting. And so that would mostly be linked to your eating habits. So you're eating more because you're stressed, or you're not eating enough because you're stressed. So those fluctuations in our weight could be a sign or symptom of anxiety or depression. And like I had mentioned before, extreme fatigue, or sleeping too much, or even sleeping too little, not being able to fall asleep, and that's nearly every day or every night, I guess. And finally, reoccurring thoughts of death or suicide or suicidal ideation. And I just want to sort of clear that up a little bit. Suicidal ideation is where we have no plan in place whatsoever to we have no plan in place whatsoever to harm ourselves. But the thoughts of suicide sort of continue to pervade our thought pattern. We don't want those thoughts there, but they seem to come and we can't get rid of them. When you are experiencing suicidal thoughts or tendencies, you may have a plan in place for how to die by suicide. You may have the means in place to die by suicide. And unfortunately, my next slide is to do with what happens when you are in this crisis mode where you may have a plan, you may have a means to die by suicide. There are two main crisis support resources that I would suggest. Number one, if you feel that you are going to harm yourself or harm somebody else, call 911 and they will respond to you accordingly. They're familiar with how to deal with someone who is in a mental health crisis and how to offer them that support. And secondly, the Nova Scotia Mobile Mental Health Crisis Team. And this mobile mental health crisis team provides crisis support for children, youth, and adults experiencing a mental health crisis. So it offers telephone crisis support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere in Nova Scotia. And there is a mobile unit response from 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. in most communities in the Halifax Regional Municipality. I'm not sure what those look like in other areas of Nova Scotia, but I've included the toll-free mental health crisis line, and you can access that again 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when you call, they understand that you are in a crisis, and they have the tools and the resources to show you what to do next to help you get through that crisis. If you know that there's someone else who is experiencing crisis and you are afraid that they may hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, call 911. In the long run, it is important to do so. Call the mental health crisis team and tell them what's going on. So, we don't have to be in extreme crisis to seek support from other people. If we're seeing these signs and symptoms in ourselves and we say, oh, you know what, Allison mentioned something that really stuck with me, and I haven't been sleeping at all, and my usual thoughts of anxiety have really turned into overwhelming fear, or I've been experiencing anger. You can seek support from other people. And I would suggest, speaking with a family doctor who can then refer you to mental health and addiction services in your area throughout Nova Scotia. They can also refer you to psychologists for counseling or to a psychiatrist who can help you understand your mental health issues or disorders, and they can come up with a plan that may include further counseling or put you on to a medication plan. Medication is a topic that is contentious among mental health supporters. Some people believe that it has no role in mental health recovery, and some would argue that it is extremely important in someone's recovery. But it is important to note that our recovery path is never going to be the same as someone else's. And so if your recovery path includes medication, then that is the right plan for you. Seeking support from other people, you can talk to your family, your friends, or a coworker when you feel safe to do so. If you are unsure of, whether this person is going to keep your conversation confidential, you might not feel that that is a safe thing to do. You need to feel comfortable that the person who you are talking with is going to understand. And if they don't understand, they're going to follow through with that and try to help you understand. Religious or spiritual leaders are another source of support. And I understand that the COVID era has changed our ability to reach out to other people, but I think we're starting to see the benefits of video conferencing, for example, using Zoom for training and accessing online support. And so those are some ways that you can seek support from other people. Another online support resource that I wanted to bring up is the 211 for Nova Scotia. So that website is ns.211.ca. And this is a website that can connect you to the programs and services in your community. So whether that is an AA group or an NA group or Al-Anon, or if you need to seek help for a family member who's dealing with physical illness, 211 lists these resources throughout Nova Scotia. It's a great website. You put in the keyword of what you're looking for, and it will list all of the resources that you can access and their contact information. So like I said in the beginning, we all have life factors that are going to impact our mental health. But for an entrepreneur, we know that they're experiencing unique stressors that are, they're experiencing those life factors that we all experience, but they're also experiencing unique stressors to their role. And we often, think of an entrepreneur as being a visionary, someone who is innovative, but we forget to, tell that story that that individual is actually vulnerable, and they experience unique factors that can impact their mental health. And I also wanted to connect this conversation in the context of the COVID-19 era. So not only are we showing these stressors for entrepreneurs, but we're also showing how they are experiencing them now. So let's just take a look at the visionary narrative, the story of the entrepreneur that we always hear. Entrepreneurs, they're innovative, they're always thinking. You can see that they are stressed, but they're courageous and they're willing to take a risk. They're highly interesting people. They're intelligent. Sometimes they're perfectionists, whether that's to a benefit or maybe even to a fault. They may appear distracted from their family, yet they're persistent and focused, and they also may be hard on themselves. And so if you know an entrepreneur, or if you are an entrepreneur, maybe you will see some of these characteristics in yourself. And that's what we're talking about when we say the visionary. But I want to go over some of the issues that they experience. Again, finances are top on the list. An entrepreneur has an inconsistent income. They don't know if they're going to have a paycheck next month or the following month, if a contract is going to go through or follow through. So that income that's going to feed their families and also feed the families of their employees is inconsistent and sometimes up in the air. So startup and maintenance business costs. As a new entrepreneur, you may not know the costs it's going to take to start up your business. And as you continue down that path of entrepreneurship, you understand that there are more costs to continue to maintain the success of your business. And of course, market uncertainty is always going to be a challenge for businesses. No matter what your service or product is, you never know when things might change. But in the COVID area, we are seeing business losses like no other time. We're losing employees. We may have to lay them off. And we're also, we may be forced to work from home, and children may be out of school. So we're trying to juggle our business and look after our children at the same time, and this can end up being a severe impact on our financial well-being. Business skills, another factor to consider. If you're a new entrepreneur, you have a terrific idea, but how do I implement this idea? How do I develop my business plan or adapt a business plan? And it may lead you to face the reality that you have a lack of skills in a certain area. And that's very stressful, because maybe you know you need to hire an accountant, but you simply can't afford to do so at the moment. Within the COVID environment, learning programs for business skills might be unavailable, or they may have changed format. And so right now, you may be seeking training to do with business development, but that opportunity is not available for you right now. And we do tend to, learn business skills from networking with other people at conferences, for associations or organizations, but we're unable to do that face to face. And so we're losing that opportunity to develop our skills further. And, taking training, developing our skills, that takes time. But if we actually are getting sick or taking care of someone else who is sick, we simply just don't have the time to do so. Workload for an entrepreneur. Ultimately, you are responsible for all of your business activities, even if you're not the one who is writing the content for the website or writing the checks for your employees. It ultimately comes down to you. You are the one who, you have your name on the loan, for example. There's a high level of commitment needed from an entrepreneur, whether that's time, money, or effort. The amount of hours that you're putting into your business can be extremely stressful. In some situations where you're working on your own, you don't have that same support that you can get from a coworker. So in a typical workplace, if you're feeling down, or you're feeling extremely anxious about something, and you're worried that you might be leaning toward that injured or ill part of the mental health continuum model, you don't have that same ability to reach out to coworkers to find support from them. And entrepreneurs, they have an extremely high sense of self-expectation. They want to do well. They want their business to succeed. And that can be very stressful for them. And of course, in COVID times, we may have to shift the delivery of our products and services. And like I said, maybe we're not able to pivot our businesses the way that we would like, or the way that we're expected to, and we may be feeling doomed or unable to continue. Isolation is another source of stress or unique stressor for an entrepreneur. Like I said before, if you're not in a typical work environment, you are isolated from your peers and colleagues. If you're working from home, you are trying to find that work-life balance. If you're working too much, you are neglecting life and family responsibilities. If you have too much going on in your life, too many responsibilities that you're juggling, you're not able to put as much effort into your business as you would like. Unfortunately, I know there's probably people who are on this call today that are hooked up to rural internet. And if that internet is not a stable or steady connection, you are isolated from the larger community in Nova Scotia. Another thing I want to mention is when you're working from home, and if you have a tendency to use substances to self-medicate, working from home gives you easier access to these substances. It may be 2 p.m. and you're feeling overwhelmed and you say, you know what, I think I'm going to have a beer. It would really make me feel a lot better right now. Whereas if you are at work, you in an office, you wouldn't be reaching for that beer. So isolation can cause several issues for entrepreneurs. In COVID times, we're seeing changes to our social and business interactions. So there's been a shutdown of our economy. Restaurants in Halifax, just as one example, have isolated us. We're no longer seeing that social interactions with one another, whether it's even for business end of year Christmas parties. We may not be able to do that. And we're also losing touch with employees. And finally, it may sound silly, but maybe we have a fear of failure and a fear of success. In the past, as an entrepreneur, maybe you've had negative experiences that you question yourself if you're able to start a new business, whether or not it's going to be successful. What happens if we can't keep up with the demand for our products? What happens if all of a sudden they become essential products and we don't have the resources to fill those orders? And another aspect of this is that your spouse or people who are close to you may have actual legitimate concerns that you are not going to be able to make this business successful. In my opinion, COVID-19 times is not an ideal time to start a business. I officially launched WELLENACT in January 2020, and I was hoping for a smooth delivery of marketing and sales for the year 2020. Like many other businesses, that didn't happen. And now we're looking back at 2020 saying, maybe we should wait until next year to see what that looks like. Failure now, if you're a startup, it could affect your future endeavors and, your passions. Sorry about that. We're sort of getting to the end here, but I wanted to mention, why is it that mental health isn't talked about the way that it could be? And many people with mental health issues or mental illness say that the stigma of mental illness is actually worse than the illness itself. And so what do we mean by that? Why do we stay silent? We tend to keep it to ourselves, and that is because stereotypes, stigma, and discrimination exclude people with mental health issues. It diminishes their self-confidence and identity. So here I just wanted to list a few negative stereotypes of people with mental health issues. And this is why we are fearful of coming out to say that we are experiencing these. They may be thinking they're going to be considered weak or needy or irresponsible, unpredictable and undependable, emotionally unstable, aggressive, or mean. And they always tend to be going on sick leave or inflating the costs of group insurance. In my experience, if you do have to go on sick leave or take sick benefits, sometimes there's in the back of your mind that people think that you're taking a vacation. We are not taking a vacation. We are trying to recover from our illness the same way that someone would recover from a back injury. So negative stereotypes leads to stigma. It leads people to avoid living, socializing, employing people with mental illness. And it creates a division between those who do have mental illness or mental health issues and those who don't have mental illness or mental health issues. And it forms negative opinions or attitudes towards people with mental illness. And so a major part of why someone may be fearful of disclosing that they have a mental health issue is because of their fear of discrimination. And there's three sort of main categories that I feel are important to address when talking about entrepreneurs and mental health. They may be fearful of discrimination from investors. If an investor knows that the entrepreneur has either in the past or is currently experiencing or has a mental health issue or illness, they're afraid that that investor would think that they're unable to move forward with their business plan, be consistent in the delivery of their finances and revenue. They may be afraid that they're going to jump ship all of a sudden and because they're so unpredictable. Employees, that entrepreneur may be fear that their employees might not have confidence in their ability to run the company. Maybe they are talking behind their back. Maybe they're spreading gossip about their manager or business owner. And so that's another reason why entrepreneurs might be fearful of disclosing their mental health issue. And finally, another fear of discrimination would be clients or customers. If they find out that I have bipolar disorder, maybe they don't want to buy our products because they're fearful that we may not be able to deliver them properly. So those are just three sort of main categories that I came up with to do with discrimination. So any mental health awareness training that I do with any group, there's no way that I can leave out the qualities, the positive qualities of people with mental illness, because we always see those bullet point lists of someone with depression, they're experiencing extreme fatigue, which is true. They're experiencing anxiety, which is true. But yet, when we move along our recovery path and we feel as if we're recovered, we don't see the same characterization that is positive. And so I just want to outline a few of those. We are determined, committed, and reliable employees and business partners. We are creative, positive, and supportive towards other people. We are kind and humorous, and above all, we are professional. And so I just want to keep that in mind as you may hear those negative stereotypes about people with mental health issues, but I also want you to keep in mind these positive qualities that may not come to mind when we're talking about this. So we're just sort of winding down here, and I want to make a few recommendations for organizations and answer that question, what next? we've gone through this workshop, or sorry, this webinar, and we want to know what is next. What do we do now when we have this information? So we have to think of the key players. Protecting and promoting the mental health of entrepreneurs in Nova Scotia requires several key players to work together. And I've come up with a few, and I may have missed some, but these are, the key players that come to mind when I'm thinking of this. Business development organizations. If you are a nonprofit organization that supports entrepreneurs, you need to be working together with entrepreneurs themselves, government agencies, those who work in the finance sectors, or investors. They need to be working with businesses themselves, chambers and associations, and also schools, universities, and colleges. In my own experience, I have teenage children, teenagers, hard to believe, but they have been learning about mental health in their studies since grade 7. That is not something that I learned about when I was that age, and I don't think that it was something that people talked about who are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s. So we see that younger folks, younger entrepreneurs, are able to talk about mental health more confidently and comfortably than those of us who didn't have that same education when we were growing up. So we definitely want to include those youth who are up and coming entrepreneurs and see how they can work together to improve the mental health of their colleagues and peers. So there are 4 key activities that need to take place in order to protect and promote the mental health of entrepreneurs in Nova Scotia. So I want to start off by saying that writing formal policies and programs, developing programs are key. And these policies might be inclusivity and discrimination policies, harassment and bullying policies. We want to see programs for entrepreneurs that allow them to access counseling services. And also, we want to see the implementation of psychological health and safety management systems. Those don't necessarily have to be in one organization or business. They can be implemented with the wider key players. Secondly, training and development, another key activity. We're starting today with mental health awareness. You want to move on with personal resiliency training, conflict resolution, and also emotional intelligence training for business owners would be some of my suggestions about moving forward. And communication, another key activity or action that needs to happen to promote the mental health of entrepreneurs. And that would be keeping close contact with your peers. If you know someone who you've networked with or who you partner with, and you notice that they are showing signs of anxiety or depression, or you see that they're slipping down that continuum of mental health, you want to be in contact with them as much as possible and tell them, I'm here to support you. Communication, if your organization or association creates newsletters, or if you have a website, you want to make sure that there's always content on there related to mental health. It could be different topics, but keeping that topic in our minds forefront and center is going to promote the mental health of entrepreneurs. and learning how to self-advocate for yourself as an entrepreneur. And maybe you need to make an accommodation for yourself. Telling those people who are around you that you need that are critical. And our work environments. We want to have mental health awareness in our work environments for our employees and our coworkers. Learning more about the national standard that outlines 13 factors of psychological health and safety in the workplace. We want those employee assistance programs to make sure that they're offering counseling. And also, finally, would be business owners and entrepreneurs leading by example. We want to show others around us, including our employees, our partners, our families, that we are taking mental health seriously and moving forward by taking practical action to change and support others around us. So my last bit here are some resources for entrepreneurs. So these are my three favorites, my go-to resources. And one of them is the Canadian Mental Health Association. They have so much information, resources, training tools. They also have this neat thing, a series of quizzes. One is called the Mental Health Meter. One is called What's Your Stress Index, and also the Work-Life Balance Quiz. They're quick and easy to take, and what they are, they give you a sense of where do you stand on that mental health continuum. They also have a takeaways toolkit, and it's basically resources for how to implement that national standard. And another sort of fun part of the Canadian Mental Health Association is a program called Not Myself Today, and it's a workplace mental health awareness campaign. And I would really encourage you to check that out. It's really sort of fun and interesting. Secondly, the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, and they have a separate division that's called Healthy Minds at Work. Posters, printed materials and handbooks you can find on their website, podcasts and online training, and also information about psychological health and safety management systems. They're my go-to. And I regretfully give you workplace strategies for mental health, and for the main reason being that I want to be a successful business, but this website offers free training and tools to improve workplace mental health. You can go on there. There's so many free resources for dealing with all these topics that we talked about today, creating policies and programs. They also have worksheets, workplace assessments, and checklists for when you do decide you want to implement some of those activities. How do you plan them? How do you check them? And go back and see how they're working for you. So I give you that resource, even though I hope that you will contact me for some mental health training. And finally, I really want to thank you all for showing up today, Friday. And here is my contact information if you want to get in touch. So again, my name is Allison Parsons. My phone number and my email are there. And if you want to learn more about my business, you can go to WELLENACT.com. And so I think that's all for me. And I'm going to stop my share and see if anyone wants to comment or ask any questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allison. That was so good. I feel like a lot of people hopefully learned a few new things. I know I did. It was really great. Anybody who wants to share the video with someone they may know, let me know maybe in the chat, and I can certainly share that with anybody who may need it. But yeah, if you guys have questions or anything like that, I think there's actually one in the chat here. Blarina is asking if there are any other provincial Nova Scotia or local health association support programs.
I'm sorry, who was the?
Her name is Blarina. She's actually one of our tenants out of Ignite
Okay.
in Yarmouth.
I would suggest going on to 211. They have so many resources, and if you're looking for some group or association in particular, they're going to be able to list that organization with the contact information. Usually they have a name there. Off the top of my head, there's just so many. And something that I wanted to mention is that, never before have we seen government, politicians, universities and colleges, and the general public talking about mental health the way that we are doing so right now as we're going through COVID. I haven't seen the conversation in full force the way that it is right now. And so the government of Nova Scotia, on their COVID information site, they have a list of mental health resources there. And I see Kim McDonald, Schizophrenia Society of Nova Scotia. I know that's sort of a general answer, but you can certainly email me and I can come up with some specific organizations.
Great, thanks so much. That's good information, Allison. I don't know if I see any other questions here.
Allison, that was really awesome. My question is, you talked about a lot of the training sessions. Is that what you do in your business? You can go into businesses and provide information on things like emotional intelligence and how to incorporate this in their own business?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, so on my website,